Good evening and welcome to the Smyrna Town Council workshop to set our agenda for our February meeting. Before we move into our items for discussion, Mark, if you will do our prayer, and Brian, will you lead us in the pledge, please? If you'll all stand with us.
Bow with me, please. Father in heaven, we just come to you this afternoon, Lord, and we want to give thanks for everything that you've given to us today and throughout each day of our lives, Father. We're just blessed, and Lord, not to take those things for granted. We ask tonight that you go with us as we deliberate the town's business, Father, and just give us wisdom and discernment, make the right decisions for our citizens. Continue to watch over our city employees, our fire and police protectors, Father, here in our city. Lord, we just know sometimes they go out and they don't know what they'll face when they get there, Father. We just ask for a hedge of protection around them. We ask for that for our military and the people serving our country here and abroad. Lord, we just continue to pray for forgiveness. We ask all these things in your name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you both. We'll now move into our items for discussion. Our first one is consideration of a resolution relative to a plan of services for properties located on tax map 55, parcels 4.01 and 5.02. Kevin?
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is a plan of services for the annexation, which is the next item on the agenda. It's for 2 tracts of land at the corner of Seminary Road and Poplarwood Road. This is an area where CUD does provide water. The town would be providing all other services to this area upon the effective date of the annexation. The Planning Commission did review it and did recommend it to you.
Questions for Kevin on this? Seeing none, we'll move on to item B, which is consideration of an ordinance relative to the annexation R3 zoning of properties located on tax map 55, parcel 4.01 and 5.02, requested by Sammy Saeed on behalf of Les Lazarus and Dan Hackenbach, containing approximately 0.8 acres. The property is located at 6070 Seminary Road, and this is a second reading. Kevin?
Yes, Mayor and Council, again, these are 2 tracts of land at the corner of Seminary Road and Poplarwood Road, requested to be annexed into the town and zoned R3. The surrounding zoning is a mix of R1 and I2 in town and RM in Rutherford County. And again, this does lie within CUD's water service area, but we would be providing all other services. There is an existing single-family residence on parcel 5.02. The existing fire flow at this location is adequate to meet town standards. Development of these parcels will require a sewer line extension of approximately 200 feet, and the developer would be responsible for that. The Planning Commission did review this and did recommend approval.
Questions for Kevin? Seeing none, we'll move on to item C, which is consideration of a resolution and memorandum of ordinance 21-01 relative to the annexation and R3 zoning of property located on tax map 55, parcel 4.01 and 5.20, comprising a total of approximately 8/10 of an acre. This is our housekeeping item. We'll move on to item D, which is consideration of a resolution relative to a plan of services for property located on tax map 54, parcel 48.00. Kevin?
Yeah, this is the plan of services for the next item, the annexation, this next item on your agenda. This is in an area as well that is served by Consolidated Utility District for water, but all other services would be provided by the town. The Planning Commission did recommend approval.
Questions or comments on this one? We'll move on to, are we on D? Yeah, consideration of a resolution relative to the plan of services for properties located on tax map 54, parcel 48.00. Is that the one we just did?
That's when we're actually on E, Mayor.
Okay. Consideration of an ordinance relative to the annexation R3 zoning of property located on tax map 54, parcel 48.00, requested by Sean Collins on behalf of Whale and Hillary S. Altaki, containing approximately 4.8 acres. The property is located at 8706 Rocky Fork, Amabile Road, and this is a second reading. Kevin?
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is an annexation and R3 zoning request. It is at 8706 Rocky Fork, Amabile Road. It also has additional frontage on the newly constructed and relocated portion of Morton Lane. The surrounding zoning is a mix of R3 and Blakeney and Cedar Hills PRDs in town, and then RM in Rutherford County. There is an existing single-family residence on this parcel. The current fire flow is not adequate to meet town standards, so upgrades will be required prior to any development occurring on this parcel. In addition, a sewer main will be required to be extended by the developer for development to occur. The Planning Commission did review this and did recommend approval.
Questions for Kevin? Seeing no questions, we'll move on to item F, which is consideration of a resolution and memorandum of ordinance 21-02 relative to the annexation R3 zoning of property located on tax map 54, parcel 48, comprising approximately 4.8 acres. This is our housekeeping item, so we'll move on to item G, which is consideration of an ordinance relative to the rezoning of property located on tax map 27O, Group D, parcel 10.00, requested by Huddleston Steel Engineering on behalf of Dr. Egbert Ribeiro to go from C2 to PRD. The property requested to be rezoned contains approximately 2.14 acres and is located on Pinto Drive, and this is a second reading. Kevin?
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is a rezoning request for a piece of property on Pinto Drive, about 400 feet south of the intersection with Eden Springs Road East. Surrounding zoning is a mix of R4 and C2. This proposed PRD is for a development of 22 townhouses. Access would be from Pinto Drive in 2 locations. Minimum square footage would be 1,100 square feet. The density is 10.28 units per acre. The previous request, which we did receive on this, was for 27 units, which was about 12.6 units per acre, so it was a reduction by about 5 units. Again, we did attach the pattern book with this request. That would also be a part of the rezoning if it is approved. The Planning Commission did recommend approval with 3 conditions. The water line will have to be extended from Joyner Drive to serve the development. The gravity sewer will have to connect to the line on Joyner Drive near the proposed detention pond. An easement will have to be obtained from the adjoining property owner to achieve this, and a type C buffer strip is required along all property lines other than along Pinto Drive.
Questions for Kevin?
I have a question. I know we talked about it having to have a buffer because of the being next to the C2, but I had a question related to the fact that the C2 property is where there's a daycare. So are there any specific requirements on that type of buffer, and will it be a fence, or what will it need to be?
There's nothing separate or more required or less required from the standpoint of it being a daycare, no. The Planning Commission, this would be a type C buffer, which is from a landscaping standpoint, the most extensive buffer we have. The type D requires a berm, and this wouldn't require a type D. We did not look at a fencing as a piece of our recommendation to the Planning Commission or anything like that. I think that does back up to, that's the area shown for, or at least in concept, is where the detention pond will be located, is where the daycare is. I think the daycare does have a fence already there on their side of the property line, I believe, because I think that's the play area and all for the daycare center.
Is there not a lot between the daycare and the edge of this property?
Actually, that's true. There is there's a church, I believe, on that property.
Okay.
You're
Church?
right. Yes.
Any idea which church?
I believe it's Mission Church of Christ is the name of it.
So there
And
is
there's
actually
R4
a
that's on the back side of it on,
Along Joyner Drive, yes.
Joyner
Since this
Drive.
would be the equivalent of R6 to R4, there is a buffer required there as well.
but this other lot we're talking about is still a commercial lot.
It is a commercial lot that the church is on, yes.
Okay.
And
Can I interrupt you?
I think there is a vacant C2 lot as well along Joyner.
Between the two. Okay.
Other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to item H, which is consideration of an ordinance relative to the rezoning of properties located on tax map 28, parcels 116.00 and 117.00 to go from R1 to C2. It's requested by James Victory on behalf of Fruitwood Properties LLC. The properties requested to be rezoned contain approximately 2.79 acres and are located at 1896 and 1907 Rock Springs Road, and these are a second reading. Kevin?
Yes, Mayor and Council, these are 2 tracts of land that have been requested together to be rezoned to C2. It's on Rock Springs Road, about 900 feet east of the intersection with Stonecrest Parkway. Surrounding zoning is a mix of R1 and C2. The Planning Commission did review this and did recommend approval.
Questions for Kevin on this? Seeing none, we'll move on to item I, which is consideration of an ordinance to create the Town of Smyrna Municipal Code Title 6-401 to 6-405 relative to the policy and procedure for distribution of unclaimed property by the police department. This is a first reading. Jeff?
Mayor and Council, I'll take this one. This is actually a model ordinance that just came out from MTAS. Formerly, the police department would have to go through the Division of Unclaimed Property with the state of Tennessee. These are items such as maybe from a burglary that they cannot find the owner for. They've tried to contact them, and the items are sitting in storage. This allows those to be sold. It's not for enforcement actions. Those go through different TCA. But this allows for the local government to dispose of that property.
Any questions for Jeff?
So if we're putting the model statute in place or regulations
Correct.
in place,
Model ordinance that MTAS
then
recommended.
with regards to it, it had a 60-day notification before you could dispose of it. So, and it also gave like 3 different methods in which you could dispose of this property. Is there a more, one that we would use over the other, or are there
Yes.
requirements for which one you can use?
Well, the town uses gov deals, so we place those on there, so it'd be by internet. Of course, but it'll meet those timelines. And I've discussed that with Rex Gaither as well today, so he's aware of that. So we'll be a little bit new on some of those timelines for them, but we're going to work with gov deals to ensure that we can meet those after 7 days, but before 15 days timeline that you read in there.
And so that was my other question, is how often would you do this distribution? Is it like once a quarter, or once every 6 months, or?
That would, of course, obviously be up to the chief and Rex, but I would say that it probably depends on how much is accumulated.
Okay.
So that if they, they probably want to have more, so they do it all at one time.
Other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to item J, which is consideration of an ordinance relative to the amendment of the Town of Smyrna Municipal Code, Title 8, Alcoholic Beverages, Chapter 2, Beer, Section 8-214, 1 and 5, permits for certain premises prohibited. This is a first reading. Jeff?
Yes, Mayor and Council, as you know, throughout the years, we've adjusted the locations or the distance location that would be from the sale of beer for off-premises. It had been 200 feet currently, 500 feet for dining inside. It has been different numbers at different times. It's been 300 previously. And what we've discovered is throughout time, and as the city becomes more dense, the opportunities for businesses and especially restaurants is decreasing with some of the prohibitions with distance locations. And so I wanted to look to some of the other cities. It doesn't mean that we have to do what they're doing, but sometimes it's good to see kind of what's going on in other communities that are similar in size. And I've sent that to you as well. It appears Murfreesboro, Franklin, Clarksville, they've removed their distance requirements. Now, this does not remove the need for a beer board. They can still consider whether any business that sells beer is good for that area based on traffic or congestion, those types of issues. Also, they would still have to either grant an on-premise or an off-premise permit. But to my knowledge, with the chief and from my experience here, I don't know of any issues that anyone has had regards to the distance locations as far as proximity to that. And I just believe the opportunities for some of our businesses would be better served with these distance requirements removed.
And you said there's no distance for liquor.
Correct. And that's another great point, is that the way it stands right now, let's say that someone's going to serve alcoholic beverages, which is defined over 8%. So anything under 8% is beer, plus you have wine. But they might be able to move next door to, let's say, a funeral home or somewhere near that within 500 feet. And they could sell liquor under their state of Tennessee license because the state is the one that regulates that. However, they wouldn't be unable to get a beer permit from the town of Smyrna. So that seems kind of superfluous that they would be able to sell one type of alcohol and not the other that is less in content,
Under what we currently have.
under what we currently have, yes.
Right. This would put us more in line with what the state's currently doing.
Yes.
Jeff, right now, the beer board has the ability to deny based on congestion interfering with school, churches.
Mhm.
Have we ever done it outside of the distance? I've never known one to be denied for anything except for the distance.
Well, but I think if you look at that, probably if you're talking about congestion or traffic, it's probably going to come within that 500 feet or 250 feet. The consideration wouldn't be that much further than there, so you've not really, they're going to depend on those distance requirements at the time. So I don't know that you would be 1,500 feet away and say the traffic. Now, everything is fact dependent, but I think it would be, usually if you're going to be adjacent to something is where that may come up. Now, obviously, as you're probably trying to point out, is that you would want to be consistent and treat everyone fairly. But it is fact-driven, and the beer board can decide if there are reasons why a certain type of establishment should not be next to one of those locations, whether it's a funeral home, school, daycare, or such.
When you're saying congestion or traffic is there an inference there that we could potentially require them to do a traffic study? I mean, how would you know how much traffic one establishment might generate versus another? Are we looking at square footage of the establishment, the type of the establishment? I mean, how do we get there from a consistency basis?
Well, it would be similar to the issues we've had with, prior to the zoning change with car lots. Councilman Sullivan, as you recall, that would be some of the issues that would come before you is the congestion or the ability to get out onto the street or where they're parking the cars or backing them out. It is subjective, yes, but that would be for the hearing before the beer board for the person or persons who are asking for the permit to establish that why they would not be or why they would be advantageous to the community or to that area.
Kevin, refresh my memory on parking. If you're in a strip center, to get your business license, you have to have X number of parking depending on what kind of establishment it is. Is that correct?
Well, obviously you have to meet whatever the zoning is, which is for alcoholic sales, it has to be a C2 or C3 under the
Right.
zoning ordinance. But yes, you have to have a certain minimum of parking. If you're a restaurant that sells alcohol, it's 1 per 100. If you're just a retail establishment, it's, but it depends on, if you're a convenience store, the house as part of a gas situation is 1 to 100 as well. If you're just a straight beer and tobacco type store or whatever, it would be, if you're in a strip center, it's 1 per 200. You would just fall under that.
Say it again, if you're in a strip center,
It's 1 space per 200 square feet.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So if they're going to be selling liquor, that could be one way. I mean, selling beer or liquor, that could be one way is there's not enough parking spots if it's in a strip center. Is that right?
Sure.
Okay. Other questions for Jeff or Kevin?
I'll just make a couple comments. So I had a recent business reach out to me and ask some questions about this. So I reached out to a few local leaders that have been affected by this ordinance in the past and asked them if there was a change. And we did look at changing it to less restrictive, how would they feel? How did it affect their business? I'm talking about church leaders and people of that nature that would be right next door or near some of these establishments that had previously been rejected. So not a specific one that was coming in front of them, but specifically some that had been rejected because of these establishments. Without fail, the three that I spoke to had no issues with removing the distance requirement because to Jeff's point, it was almost like we were encouraging, I guess, a higher content of alcohol in some of these establishments. If it's a restaurant and they can only sell beer, or they couldn't sell beer, but they could sell liquor by state license, then, the people that came in there to eat dinner and wanted to have a glass of wine, they're either going to elect not to or just go for something harder. So because of our ordinance, we might have been pushing more liquor sales at some of these establishments, which would still, and I think in every case, these restaurants still opened next to these establishments. They just weren't allowed to sell beer. Instead, they're selling liquor or harder drinks. So because two of them said, if this was the first time alcohol was being introduced into the city, they would have had a whole different perspective. But because it's already, they're already allowed to sell alcohol by state law, it just didn't make sense that the city would limit them. And it seemed like it was almost an unfair law against businesses because of their location, because of that state law that it kind of contradicted. And the other piece that I was going to mention, and I think you did a good job, Jeff, was with the traffic side of it. I did hear from another pastor in the community where there's a bar nearby. He was concerned about people possibly leaving the bar late at night that had too much to drink, and even if police patrolling, what's the risk to his establishment if they were having a youth organization or outside event or whatever. But in his case, he's more than the 500 feet from the church anyway. So this distance didn't affect him one way or the other. So I think that's a legitimate concern, but that's really a policing concern that we should have all over town, not just, in a half mile of an establishment.
Also keep in mind, there's also, this does not remove any type of enforcement prong of the ordinance or the beer board. There's still a litany of prohibitions of activities that can happen there or not, including any type of criminal activity. So let's say that there was an issue or becoming a nuisance or those types of things, those establishments still could be brought before the beer board because of that activity and could either be suspended or revoked depending on the infraction.
I'm sorry, one other thing I think we forgot to mention too is even though with the current ordinance, even if an establishment is not allowed to sell beer, they can still BYOB. So you could still have wine and beer drinking and consumption going on in the establishment legally. It's just they can't sell it. So there's a lot of establishments that have to, when that's the case, they offer like a setup fee. We'll for $10 we'll give you frosty mugs and a pitcher, and you bring your own beer or you bring your own bottle of wine. All of these establishments could still do that even with the existing ordinance. So you're not really preventing the alcohol consumption in that distance to the church. You're just preventing the establishment from selling it and controlling it, which is another issue. If they've brought their own, the establishment can't cut them off. State law allows anyone selling alcohol and actually mandates that if they feel like someone has reached a limit that they have to cut them off. And if they're not the one selling it to them, then they can't do that. If they're bringing their own in, they can drink until it's gone, basically. You could stop giving them glasses, I guess, but you're getting into a different situation when you start when you don't control the flow of alcohol.
I guess HG and I have probably sat up here the longest, and multiple times this has been brought before us, not taking the distance away, but what distance are we going to do? And I can remember a discussion at one time was when churches were first starting to go into strip centers. And we had not seen that before, and we had real concerns about that, and daycares and those sorts of things. And I don't think that people think about that as much anymore, not like when it was very first starting to happen. And I kind of feel like if they're already being able to sell hard liquor, it's not going to be much different than if they're allowed to sell beer as well. So,
That was the other thing, right, Jeff, if they're in the strip mall with a church or a facility that would be restricted, the distance doesn't matter, right? If they're in this, under the same roof, isn't that right?
If the church is within the strip mall, then the
Right.
distance never
Yeah.
didn't.
Because I know that we had the one behind Tractor Supply where Manami's used to be, that Manami sold alcohol and there's a church right next door.
Yes.
So the strip mall really only comes into factor if there's a church off, adjacent property is the only reason the distance even matters at that point.
I think the fear had, in the past, early on was there'd be loitering around these types of areas and people outside. And I think it's just shown that's not to be the case in the last 2 decades. I think that it just, if there has been, that is usually enforced otherwise.
Unfortunately for us and fortunately as a town, most of the considerations that we've had have been restaurant establishments, which are
Correct.
much
'Cause they do have to
more
serve
of a
meals.
family
yep.
or environment anyway, so that's been fortunate for us.
Other questions?
It's probably too early, but have we gotten any feedback on this at all? I'd say probably since it's just come up with, people probably aren't aware of it that much.
I agree, Councilman. Probably tonight's the first, those that don't look for the legal announcements or those types of things, tonight's probably the first that they've heard of it. But I did speak with a lot of my colleagues to ask that those that didn't have those distance requirements, and, they've not had any issues.
Jeff, is that more than not? I mean, when you say you talk to your colleagues, are we talking about local municipalities that you have a relationship with? And you talk to
Yes.
them about their ordinances and so forth?
Yes.
And for the most part, is that what they've gone to? Is that what they're doing now?
Well, I've
And
noticed.
is it successful?
Yes, like Franklin and Murfreesboro, especially those that are growing and that have a lot of dining, those types of places. And they've not had any issues, but they were at least able to communicate to me about it.
I'll bet it's going to be a lot like us. If it's brought back up, they revisit and look at no distance at all. I don't know that, but I'm probably going to get.
And I think you saw that Lebanon was down to 100 feet. I mean,
Yeah.
It's not even out
that's
there.
the setback for some folks.
Yeah.
That's the
So,
setback, exactly.
Okay, so some may want to do some polling of some people in the community like Steve did and see how some feel about it to get people's temperature on it. And I'm sure we'll have some people that might email us or Facebook us. Move on to item K, which is consideration and approval of an amendment to the town's PTO donation policy. That is included in the employee handbook. Is Jeff
Craig's going to
Craig?
come in. I'd like to say a couple things about this to the council. I've asked Jeff Craig to do a little work on this for us, and also I met with Jeff Peach and the 2 assistant town managers and myself to talk about this. I've been approached, we currently have a process where an employee that may have an extended illness that is considered life-threatening, it's major illness, our other employees are able to donate a day of PTO if that person is out an extended period of time and their PTO is exhausted. Other employees are able to donate to the PTO bank, but it's for the employee use only. We've had several employees, or I personally have had several employees come to me and said, could we extend that to maybe look at the extended family of the employee, the spouse, and the children? Because many times, if there is a life-threatening event, it may not just be the employee, it may be the spouse, and then the employees needed some time to take care of their spouse or their children and those type things. I'm not going to get into the details. Jeff's going to do that, but I wanted you to know this was something that was really kind of originated through our employee base, and as we reviewed it and talked about it, because it is a donation of PTO time by another employee, it's really a net, almost even number, because those are PTO days we would have paid, to that employee if they would used them or allowed them to be brought over in the PTO bank to help another employee. And this being driven by the employee's request spoke volumes to me So I hope you'll take a look at this, and Jeff will give us kind of the outline of the details, but it's something we'd really like to see for us to be allowed to give this benefit to our employees.
Sure, Mayor, Council. Brian's done an excellent job of kind of explaining the rationale for why we're bringing this to you tonight. You've got the policy, the minor changes that we've recommended to it, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have. Just to give you a little history about it, we do have 3 or 4 people a year that have benefited from this, and they've been very appreciative, very thankful, and our employees are very generous to help out their coworkers. And we looked back at our previous family medical leaves for spouses or children, and luckily we would only had 2 or 3 in the last 3 or 4 years that would have even applied for this. So it's not like this is opening up Pandora's box and we're going to have a lot of different people that are going to be getting donated time, but there will be some unique situations where we will have people that could benefit from it, and so we're asking for your consideration in adopting the new policy.
One point I'd like to point out is this is a voluntary program. Nobody's going to have pressure to say, give up a day for XYZ employees and, dire straits or something like that. This is strictly voluntary, and the employees are the ones asking about it, so.
Yeah, I think it's a great policy, and I really appreciate the change, because I think with a lot of us are kids of baby boomers, so a lot of our majority of our population is aging. And so this is an issue, and that's what brings it to mind. You specifically say immediate spouse or children. What about a parent that they have to care for or something?
This, right now, we're looking just for those within the household with the employee. We can look at that later, but
Okay.
right now, that's all we're looking at.
I was just thinking that could be something that more likely would come up as well.
Well, what we're looking at is how this actually ties into what our current insurance policies are from the Smyrna Family Leave and Medical and those type things, and
maybe
tying it to that.
It
Yeah.
would have to be somebody
Yeah,
that's covered.
yeah. And it's, a child that, I think even at 18 years old, they would exhaust from being eligible at that point. It's really tied to the family, help me out, Jeff, the Family Medical Leave,
Yeah, understand. All right.
FMLA.
No, my personal opinion is it's a great policy. I think it says a lot about the employees that they would want to donate. I think it shows that there really is a family here at Town of Smyrna, and it's impressive that employees would want to do that.
Other questions or comments? Okay, we'll move on to item L, which is approval of the terms of and authorization for the mayor to execute a contract with Neil Shafer for professional services for the Jefferson Pike Sam Ridley Parkway intersection project. Hi.
Mayor and council, this scope and fee proposal from Neil Shafer is for the intersection improvement on Sam Ridley Parkway onto Jefferson Pike. What we're looking at doing is getting a congestion mitigation grant to add that second left turn lane on Sam Ridley onto West Jefferson Pike. Because right now, you're getting the backup all the way sometimes to Weekly Lane. And this scope of service is broken down into 3 tiers. The first would be the letter intent for the grant. The next will be the grant application. And then the third will be the preliminary engineering. And we would only execute each tier as needed if TDOT opens the grant proposals, we'll do the letter. If the letter is approved and accepted, then we would have them move on into the application portion. And if we're approved, then we would move on into the design phase of the contract.
Questions on this?
Charles, that'll be double wide lanes that it would turn into when Jefferson Pike's complete, correct? I mean,
Yes, it'll be
so
2
there won't be any
left turns.
merging once they come in, okay?
No, because like I said, when the new Jefferson Pike, when it's built, it'll be 5 lanes,
Right.
so it will have 2 lanes that you can turn into. So it will have 2 acceptance lanes, so it'll be 2 lanes going into 2 full lanes.
And I'm probably asking for too much here, but is there any possibility, has that been discussed at all, for the opposite direction to have a right turn lane?
Let's go. That's the same thing.
Oh, you mean on Jefferson Pike
Onto Jefferson
Nissan?
Pike,
Oh,
in front of Gill's turning right?
right. When the new section comes through there, it will be the current 5 lanes, but they're going to be adding 6-foot shoulders you could restripe that and get another lane in there, and whether you want to make that a double left off Jefferson onto Nissan, Sam Ridley, you could do something of that nature, or you could maybe have it a either or right or left, if, depending on volumes.
If anybody pulls up at that light and does not turn, it backs up all the way past Gills on a busy day. So
Yeah.
I'm just curious if that might be something that,
That's something we can take a look at in this, because the congestion mitigation is for turn lane, so that's something we could look at. And with TDOT bringing their project all the way up to the end of the intersection with that extra 6 foot on each side, you could get another 12-foot lane in there.
Is that our discretion or is that TDOT's?
It's TDOT.
That's TDOT is what they have, and like I said, once we did this, that's something, that project's 3.5 years out, and that would be the last thing, will be striping out. So if this opportunity comes through for this grant, then hopefully we could catch them before they do stripe it, and we could do a construction plans revision to take that out, restripe that there.
Whether the grant comes through or not, is that something we need to look at in regards to striping prior to that happening?
We could, that's something we could bring up to them to see if we could do it, and get that in there. Right now, it's just, when you have that left turn into Gill Street, that keeps you from putting that second left-hand turn lane in currently.
Yeah. And it's, everything about this would have to be approved by TDOT. It's not that we can make the decision we want.
Yeah.
So.
But you can't get a yes or a no if you don't ask, so.
We
Yeah.
reached out even prior to this. I personally sent a letter from my office to TDOT Safety to have them look at that intersection because of the situation. And they've given us some indications that safety would be looking at this when this project is done. They weren't going to do anything until then. So we can ask these questions as we go into this project, but again, we'll be at their mercy.
Yeah, there's just a lot of considerations right there. You know, there's a lot of open right-of-way. There's a lot of open right-of-way in front of Gills, but, we also have the Taylor Farms development that hasn't started.
Right.
That I think would require a straight, which
Yeah.
we don't have today.
And that's,
So I'm assuming that's part of the 5, 2 in, 2 out, 1 in the middle.
Right, you could do it kind of like it does come off Weekly Lane, where you have the one left and you have a left straight that goes on across
Yeah,
Weekly.
and we would
across.
work with Taylor Farms. I've actually had discussions with Brian over there about when and if they do develop that property, that we would want to see the alignment of their entrance there. And we'd also like to see possibly
up the hill.
a right turn into theirs on a deceleration lane going into that property, so it would allow Sam Ridley and Nissan Boulevard to continue to flow. So there's a lot of considerations on that interchange.
Well, and I think when we've been in meetings with Paul and Steve and me, a lot of times we'll say, hey, give this a look, and they'll, you know what I
they'll
mean?
work with us.
Yeah.
But I don't want to go on record and say we've made any promises,
No.
because we do not have the ability to give that final
I
approval.
already wrote that promise down.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid. I figured it was going to end up in my goals for next year.
I wrote right-hand lane, check.
Yeah, yes. Don't write that.
It kind of makes me think when if I'm coming from Nissan, for example, and I'm in front of Nissan and I'm heading towards Jefferson Pike. So I'm past the Nissan plant, heading towards Jefferson Pike. That intersection right there has a bicycle lane. I've yet to see a bicycle in that lane. But
Yeah.
it backs up so much traffic because nobody can use that right lane to make a right onto Enon Springs Road. So it's kind of redundant a little bit. I'm not dissing bicyclers at all. I'm just saying that traffic really does back up there sometimes, especially on shift changes. And it's, you gotta wait a little while at that light to make a right, if you're trying to make a right.
Hopefully, we're going to have more lanes moving more traffic, even, on the Jefferson Pike itself.
Right.
Plus what's going to be coming off of Nissan and Sam Ridley, so.
Yeah, we all got these traffic wishes, Charles. We just snap that finger and fix them, right?
I know, we're working on them. Like I said, that's why we'd like to get Neil Shafer on, because these grants, when they come open, the time frame window to get them in is so short, and especially the application, it's a little bit more complicated because you have to do the air quality analysis. So that's why we want to have it sitting on the shelf, so when that window opens, we won't be able to get our application in and try to work on getting that funding.
So timeline-wise, I know you said it's short, so what are we looking at for the?
Well, they
application
haven't
part?
opened the grant up. We just want to have it on the
Okay.
shelf, so when they do open it up and say, we are now accepting air quality grant applications. We want to have ours ready to go. So you never know when that window's going to be.
So we just want to make sure the engineering firm that we want to work with is on, standing ready. We won't expense any dollars until we actually do some work with them.
Thank you, Charles.
You're welcome.
Other questions?
Yeah, Charles and I talked about this for some time this morning. Same thing that Mark had asked about being able to turn left coming out of Jefferson Pike onto Sam Ridley, and he kind of explained some of the things like he did tonight as far as the extra road there at Gills and that type of thing. One thing, if we can't do it, Charles, is, and we didn't talk about this part, but I got to thinking about it more, is if we open up that lane turning onto Jefferson, it's going to give us two lanes turning onto Jefferson now from Sam Ridley, okay?
Right.
I think over the last, maybe the last 12 months or something, there's been a time change that it feels, I believe, on those lights that have given it a little bit longer to turn left onto Jefferson. It sure seems like there's more people getting through there than there used to be. Is that correct, or do you know? It just seems like that line is not quite as long as it used to, and more getting through than used to get through.
I thought you were getting out of this, didn't you?
I'd never get out of it, but no, there was a little bit of time added to that movement with TDOT and their consultant, Kimley Horn. They went through and evaluated several of all the intersections, the lighted intersections along the 266 and 102 corridor, and just to do some retimings of it, and that adjustment was made a few extra seconds.
I was pretty sure that there'd been more time, because I get in that traffic quite often, so it seems like more getting through. So I guess my point or my question is going to be is that if we open up 2 lanes going on to Jefferson, we're probably not going to need as long at that time or going left, because you got 2 different groups turning. Maybe we can add time coming off of Jefferson onto Sam Ridley for more people to get through there.
We definitely look at the signal timing once the improvements are made, as long as with the improvements that are being made as far as adding turn lanes and straight throughs, and make the adjustments.
Because that one is a pretty short light.
Yes.
And there's not a whole lot of cars to get through that one, so. That's all.
Other questions?
No, I just want to say to Tom that the changes you made to Enon Springs and Lowry Street lights are recognized. Good job. Brian, I don't know. Brian probably got out there and did it himself.
I did not. I just shared the message.
I think Steve climbed the mast on
I'm very affectionate with the mast arm.
But it's your point, you can make a left. If there's a train going through, you still can get the left turn lane onto Eden Springs East.
All that was corrected.
So, yeah.
That's a good one.
Well, and I'll tell you what, the majority of it is people that they get to the light and they're on their phone. I mean, it's, and they are,
Since we put that
They're trying to Bluetooth
left
that
turn,
signal.
that's right.
since we put that left turn red in, I've probably been honked at 10 times because I'm sitting there and not turning because it's red, and everybody behind me thinks, well, there's no cars coming, why aren't you going there? They haven't actually paid attention that there's a red light now. So it's getting better. They're starting to notice, I think, but
Takes a little while.
I think that's why they're
Takes a
honking,
little time.
really.
yeah, it's either that or because I put my backup lights on.
Okay, we will move on to item M, which is approval of the terms of and authorization for the mayor to execute a contract agreement with TDOT for highway rail grade crossing improvement project crossing 349-237S at Washington Street and Front Street at CSX Railroad, log mile 1.64 in Smyrna.
Mayor and council, this is the contract agreement between the town's 10% share of the construction. This is for the roadway. You've approved last meeting the portion that CSX was doing, the construction funding, but this will be for the roadway improvements and the sidewalks, pavement markings, and signs that will lead up to the railroad's portion of the project.
Question for Charles on this?
Is it getting close?
We're ready, like I said, we've got the agreement with CSX and their construction funding to release that so they can get there first. So we want the railroad to get in first, get their part done. And we have to get the right-of-way easement grant. That's something we're working on now, so that'll be something that'll be coming before you in the next month or so, is the easement grant with the railroad.
We're still a little ways out.
Yeah, but I
So
mean,
I heard no.
Yeah, we're still a little ways out.
well, I mean, we weren't even, talking about it hardly even a year ago when it,
Yes, sir.
Well, our road,
Glad to
like I
see
said,
you
our
moving.
roadway construction plans are ready, and they've been approved by the railroad, so we're all just waiting for phasing. We want the railroad to get in there and do their construction work first, and then that way we can match up with it. And same with the Zama Park, having that construction done, and the Lowry Street project coming in, it will do portions of those curbs down there, and that way we can match into existing and won't have to do a lot of construction revisions once we get ready to go.
Sounds good. That way they're not waiting on us, right?
No, they're not waiting on us.
But we will wait on CSX until they're ready.
We're just kind of doing one piece of,
State.
I understand.
Other questions? We'll move on to item N, which is consideration of a resolution to adopt a traffic calming policy to use as a guideline for evaluating the need and applicability for installation of speed humps with the town of Smyrna right-of-ways. Tom?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. As you know, there are several streets that you hear about, complained about from time to time as far as speeders traveling down a little too fast in residential areas. We try to do various things as far as encouraging traffic calming. We've gone out and put some blinking red lights on stop signs to encourage people to stop, reflective tape, do some additional striping on roadways. Talked to Brian about a year ago, and we started looking at speed humps. We put some down on Montgomery Way and St. Francis and found a lot of really good results with that. And what we decided to do at that point is sit down and work with Jeff Peach to put together a policy on speed humps and where they would be applicable to put down, and maybe there are places where it would not be as good an idea to put down. The policy, we looked at the City of Brentwood and City of Murfreesboro's traffic calming policy, kind of put some information together on it, and uses that as a basis for this policy that you see in front of you. Some of the, just generally speaking, overview of it, the policy is that if someone is requesting, either the citizen themselves or through an HOA, is requesting a speed hump to be in a certain location on the street, they will contact the Public Works Department, identify that location, and we'll go to see if it meets the criteria in the policy. If it does, then what they could do is apply. What they would do is they would put a petition together with the citizens that live in a certain vicinity of where the speed hump will be located, and get a certain percentage of approval as outlined in the policy. And there will also be a financial responsibility. If it did get approved and passed, there would be a certain financial responsibility that the town would bear as far as installing speed humps, as well as the HOA or citizens group that had asked for them.
I would tell you, we looked at, again, Montgomery Way, and we put one over on St. Francis as a test just to see. We also used some rumble strips in some other areas that we were having issues. The rumble strips didn't appear to help. The speed humps did help, but we got several calls after the speed humps were put in from neighbors going, we didn't want them, we didn't ask for them. 2 or 3 other neighbors did ask for them. They were, some neighbors said there was some noise associated with them. We had one neighborhood that complained, I think, to one of the council members that they had a new Lamborghini and they couldn't get their vehicle over the speed hump. Just some things like that. So part of our rationale in thinking through and looking at what some of the other communities were doing, I think, if we look at speed humps, there's an expense associated with them. But there's also some buy-in that needs to happen from the standpoint of acceptance of the speed humps in the neighborhoods. So I think that's what we're trying to do is, put some of that responsibility back on the neighborhoods to say, if you truly want speed humps, we can work with you, but you need to let your neighbors know that this is a wholesale issue for all the neighborhood. We have had some comments from some of the other communities that once they went to this type policy, there was not as many speed humps requested because some of the neighbors were like, I'm the one that's speeding, and before we have to have an expense out of our pocket, I need to slow down and those type things. So it's really kind of to educate the community of what it takes in the calming of the traffic and those type things. But if there's truly need, we want to be able to offer that service. But It will require a financial investment by the neighborhood, and it'll also be an education to the neighborhood that the speed hump is coming, so that we don't have people calling going, I didn't want that out here, so.
I like the fact that the neighborhood has to have skin in the game through actually talking to the neighbors and having discussion with them about, did they want this or not? I guess I'm a little curious. I don't mind a financial responsibility on the neighbors or the HOA. Do you have any idea price-wise, like the one that was done on Montgomery Way, what were we looking at?
I think it's about $3,500
Yeah, between $3,500 and $4,000.
to install.
For everything?
For
Each,
one
yeah, that's-
set.
For one set?
Yes.
And they would be responsible for 60%?
Yes.
Okay.
And then we would do the installation. We'd pay the 40%, plus we would put the labor to install it and maintain it.
So they're really only purchasing 60% of the hump.
That's exactly right.
Gotcha, okay.
Just a thought, going forward, I guess, and there's a lot of subdivisions and neighborhoods that have been around here for a long, long time that aren't HOA-driven, and probably wouldn't pertain to much of that anyway. But going forward with development, I'm just wondering if we need to have some thought about, as opposed to speed bumps, there's sort of other alternatives that you can do. Now, I don't know how it would work with police and fire safety. That's something they'd have to have some input on, but I was in Berkshire subdivision this past week. I had to go over there for some business, and while I was in there, I happened to notice, first of all, it's a nice subdivision. When you enter, it's very well manicured and tree line, there's a median, and their lanes in and out kind of fish. They're not hard, but they just kind of fish. And you can tell that slows the traffic down, and when you get to a turn, it's a roundabout system. So larger developments have gone to that, and I think it's really controlled traffic speed. Now, again, speed humps probably hinder a little bit of fire and police safety. Probably fishing roads do as well, but at some point, we've got to figure out a way to slow cars down. That's the main thing. Then maybe we don't need police there as often, for accidents and things. So that may be something the council wants to look at or talk about at some future reference. And I would challenge everybody to go out to Berkshire and go in the entranceway and just see what you think about that, get an idea off of that. That's a large subdivision, so road-wise, there's space to do that. As you get denser, there may not be as much, but.
Roadway geometry does have a lot to do with traffic calming. You're right, as far as that curvature of the road, that does help to slow cars down.
What were we did a presentation, they were talking about just the narrowing of a lane, just changing how much striping, how it comes in,
Right.
how that will also slow down. What were somebody that presented to us was talking about that.
Didn't we see something out at Spring Hill or something that just, to me, it didn't make a whole lot of sense.
No, they did something.
That looked a
They
little
did
nuts to me.
something, but they
Others-
just talked about decreasing the lane width will slow down too, so,
To some degree,
depends on who's driving.
well, and just like Morton Lane, I mean, at 3 o'clock, it's like a drag strip out there when the high school lets out. I mean, we get tons of calls on that road, and I don't know that narrowing a lane is going to slow those high school students down as far as, and that's a lot of what was coming through on Montgomery and stuff was in the afternoon, Montgomery was in the afternoon when the schools let out, so
Officer Bailey used to know how to slow us down.
I understand.
He slowed many down.
He slowed me down a lot.
We write a lot of tickets on those roads. Unfortunately, as soon as we leave, they start back up.
Tom, can you talk about the differences in road designations? If they're not going to be allowed in arterial and collectors, then how do we determine, is it numbers of cars that are on that particular road, or, because there's some of the places that we're talking about with that designation are not going to be eligible for speed bumps in there.
Yeah, the policy outlines places like that have an average daily traffic count of more than 2,500 cars per day. If there's more than that number of vehicles on the road per day, then that would not be in a consideration. Also, roads that are like collectors, that where people travel more going through sections, and arterial roads like Old National Highway, place like that, Lowry Street, we would not be putting any kind of speed humps on those type of roads.
These are more about neighborhood roads, neighborhood streets.
Yes, sir. Well, there's collectors that are neighborhood roads then,
Some are.
like Brookhaven. Would that be a collector?
I'd have to look it up. I don't know if a minor collector would probably be considered a minor collector.
So, does it get a speed bump on it then?
Right.
You'd have
He's
to
saying he
apply.
wants one in front of 121 Brookhaven, is what he's saying.
121. We have to look into it.
I read two.
I'm resigned to the fact that's what happens on my
It's a major
road.
cut.
I'm just talking about, you
It
know,
is,
that people need to understand that there are going to be roads that are not eligible for this.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I noticed in the policy that you guys are proposing. I like that it's 2/3 of the houses within, or the owners within 1,000 feet of the humps have to sign.
Right.
There's also limits on amount of traffic, how many cars per day, et cetera. Because I could see without those controls, you know, every one-lane road with 4 houses on it, 2/3 is 3, so I want a speed bump, right? So I could see the point, and I think you did a good job in the policy of
Thanks.
laying that out.
Most of the calls we've had for traffic calming have been where children are playing in the yards and that type of stuff. It's not Lowry Street, it's not, you know, Florence Road, those type things. It is truly the neighborhood streets is where we're getting most of our calls from. You know, so for the most part, the calls that we've had, for the most part, those roads would be eligible for the speed humps if the neighborhood wanted them. And that's why, you know, one of the things Tom said is call Public Works, and they'll go out and do a survey of the street and let the neighborhood know whether or not they're eligible to even have speed humps. And we like the speed humps, you know, somebody mentioned the emergency services. The speed humps do allow us to have a break in the middle of the road where the fire trucks and stuff can get through. That's one of the reasons we looked at those. You know, and I'll be honest with you, right after we put them on Montgomery Way, I went out there and sat in my truck to watch the activity. Had several opportunities where a car would slow down and let a car go over the speed hump, and then they would go to the middle of the road and use those brakes to get around it. But at the end of the day, guess what? They also slowed down. I mean, so it was effective to that degree.
Other questions?
I'm not sure if there's a misprint here, or will approval of each one of these things come before us? It
Yes, I
says
think
Board of
that is.
Commissioners, and we hadn't been a Board of Commissioners in 21 years.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it should have been Board of.
Town council.
I'm sorry,
Looks-
town,
So
that
we
should have
will,
been town
it will
council.
come before us to approve each one?
For resolution, the way that it's written.
That's based really off of HOA suggesting it to us anyway. So they're wanting it at that point.
But everything will be taken care of prior to
Yeah,
that.
it'll be
They'll have
it'll
done the
just be-
petition, they'll have
Yeah,
done.
everything will be done.
everything.
It'll come to you to say yay or nay for the final approval.
Okay.
So what would be, if it doesn't qualify for the hump, or they don't have enough people, are there any alternatives?
There really isn't. I mean, we can continue to do what we're doing, and, you know, Tom and his folks have done a good job of adding some stop signs in some of the neighborhoods to try to slow down traffic and make them stop at the intersections. We can continue to use some of the blinking light technology that we've done. But, I mean, it's just, you know, it goes back to, it's almost like the litter problem we've got. These are personal choices people are making, and unfortunately, we can't be everywhere all the time to wait on somebody to come through your neighborhood speeding. You know, the chief has been great. When we have areas that have some concerns, you know, we'll beef up our patrol through that area for a couple of weeks, but, you know, I mean, it's an unrealistic thought that we could be out there to catch every speeder that goes through the neighborhood. It's personal choices, and we're doing the best we can.
And I understand that. I just know that would be, if I were someone in one of these neighborhoods and this were offered and I wouldn't qualify, then I would be thinking, what else can be done? So that's why I thought I'd go ahead and
At this point, I don't know anything
ask.
else we can do. Like I said, the rumble strips do not work. The first couple of times people go over them, they hit that rumble strip, they may slow down for a second, but then once they know they're there,
They get used to it, yeah.
they're used to it. It's just like on the side of the interstate or something, you know, when you get your tire off to the right or something, you get used to it and you just move on, you know, kind of thing. It's, the humps so far have been the most effective calming that we've seen. Montgomery Way is a great testament to that. But, you know, it's a very expensive fix all around town.
Other questions or comments? Then we'll move on to item O, approval and authorization for the mayor and council to approve Cleary Construction as the top-ranked respondent to be the construction manager at risk for the Rotary Soccer Park Stormwater Project. Tom?
Thank you. This is phase one of the Master Stormwater Project, and what we're looking at doing, because Tennessee state law does not allow a municipality to go out and perform a design-build project directly, where we can directly hire a construction manager risk and construction company based on price. We have to hire the construction manager at risk first, and then work with that construction manager to go out and get bids for a guaranteed maximum price, and then decide if we're going to do the project or not, and we're going to approve the construction company. So what we did as part of the Rotary Soccer Park drainage improvement projects, which is to take water out of the closed drainage basin of Rotary Soccer Park, send that to Stewart Creek. We went out and for a request for qualifications for a construction manager risk. And what that person would do, they would work on behalf of the town, kind of like a construction engineering inspector that help us through the bid process to go out and gather bids from construction companies to actually perform the work, the construction work to do the project. And what we're looking at doing, the basis of the guaranteed maximum price that the construction company would be submitting is outlined in the request for qualifications under section 1.2. It talks about enlarging the retention pond, putting a pump station in, and a force main to pump the stormwater from Rotary Soccer Park out to Stewart Creek. But at this time, this phase is just to hire just to select a construction manager risk. We had two respondents, Cleary Construction and Beach Construction. Based on the evaluation of the committee, we are ranking Cleary Construction as the first most successful respondent and requesting them to be our construction manager risk on the project and help us go out to bid on it.
How is their fee determined?
Typically, it is a cost of the total construction cost, so whatever that may be, it could be 5-8% of construction cost. Because, like I said before, the statute that we have to work under with a project such as this, we can't go out to a construction management firm at risk based on a proposal amount, a percentage, or anything like that. It just has to be qualifications driven.
Other questions? Then we'll move on to item P, which is approval of the terms of and authorization for the mayor to execute a contract with Demand Mechanical for replacement of the heat exchanger coils, boilers, and pumps at the Town Event Center and the SOAC. Tom?
Thank you, Mayor Council. We went out to bid to replace some of the coilers and an alternate item for the boilers at the Town Event Center. We're having a lot of failures with those. Some of the parts are just rusting through. We're fixing them almost every week. We're down there making some type of repair and really on a daily basis just checking it to make sure that this thing is still functioning properly. We went out to bid and we actually got two respondents on that. One of them did not turn their forms in on everything on time. They came in 10 minutes late to the meeting. So we could not open their bid on it, but the one bid that we did receive is from Demand Mechanical, and they came in under budget. We had a budget of $200,000 for this project, and total, including boiler replacement, came in at $162,688, which is well below our estimated total of our engineering cost estimate of $343,530.
I would have hated to have been that employee.
Missed it by that much.
Yeah. Questions for Tom?
When would it be done?
He said it would take about 3 weeks to do, and so as soon as we get them approved, they can probably start within a few weeks. And
So it still falls under this year's budget?
yes, sir.
So the boiler's not anything that's proprietary from when it was put in or anything like that?
No, not that I'm aware of. It'll be able to replace the pumps and the boilers.
Yeah.
Questions for Tom? Seeing none, we'll move on to item Q, which is consideration approval of for the fire department surrendering 51 outdated AED units to Core Medical in exchange for 4 AED training units. Chief?
Mayor, council, Mr. Town Manager, I'd like to thank y'all. Because of y'all funding, we were able to upgrade our AEDs throughout the town buildings, frontline apparatuses, and frontline police cars. But we have 51 AEDs that they do not make parts or anything for anymore. Their cardiac science, and cardiac science has been bought by Zoll. And we were offered 4 training AEDs for the 51 that we cannot use anymore. And I would like to ask y'all's permission to give Cora Med the 51 AEDs for the 4 trainers.
Questions for Chief on this? Okay, we'll put that on the agenda, and we will move on to item R, which is consideration of an ordinance amending Title II, Chapter 1 of Smyrna Municipal Code relative to the Arts Commission, and this is a first reading. Raquel or Jeff?
Yes. We've been discussing the Arts Commission for several months and thought this would be a good time to reevaluate going forward, since we are now at the time where we're getting new applicants for the boards and the commissions. And for the Arts Commission, it's been a challenge over the last couple of years to keep members on the board. For one reason or another, individuals have had to resign. And I think part of that is because of the restrictions on being a commission. We could only meet once a month. There could be no outside meetings other than that one meeting. And I think it probably made it a little bit more difficult to try to do what the commission was intended to do. So we've talked about possibly coming back to restructure it, but removing it as a commission that requires the publication notice for meetings. And also it's limited to only citizens of the town of Smyrna to be on the actual commission. And we've had individuals who were interested in working with the commission but did not live within the town limits. And so we want to be able to offer or create some type of structure that would allow the individuals who do want to work on the board to be able to do that and to be able to promote the arts in a way that doesn't require the restrictions that being in the commission, under the commission does. So Jeff is looking at what we need to do to be able to move forward.
Yes, so operationally, or as far as the municipal code goes, it's the easiest part, which is we would just remove Chapter 1 of Title 2, and we'll just reserve that for future ordinance if we need it. And that would end the Arts Commission as a public board. I believe what they are looking at, as you recall, if you remember, you can have a committee that advises, the administration advises the town manager, which is not the same as a council-created committee, which was what Councilman Peebles was referencing. Just as similar to when we started with the memorial committee. And I believe also the Lowry Street committee, I believe was another one that's similar to that. So that kind of gives them a little more freedom of meeting times and inclusiveness to kind of give, I think they've discovered that it's just made it too difficult with the parameters that they have to work under right now. And I think that as Councilman Peebles had expressed to me, that her main concern was they still can accomplish the things that they want to accomplish. And I believe that they've worked out a way that they can do that and still provide a great avenue for the citizens on arts.
and my recollection may not be right, but initially, I think when the board was formed, yes, and we were really wanting to promote arts within the town of Smyrna. And now other groups outside of
Right.
government have done that, which is exactly what you want to see happen within a community so that government's not having to take it on. And so to see those individuals step up and those groups step up have been a real blessing for our community. But I'm glad that we're still wanting to find a way to stay involved and accomplish the things we want to accomplish, but not necessarily doing it through a board or committee that is specific to the town. So, questions or comments? I appreciate all that the Arts Commission has done over the years. We've had great representatives and, but
Before you
Yep.
move on, I do want to say that there are still some projects that are in the works that will be taking place. So the intent is not for it to totally disband, but for it to be restructured in a way that would allow flexibility for those who do want to participate on it.
does this affect our grant at all through GNRC?
You still have the mechanism of applying for grants to the town. It would just go through a different,
But the one that we just received, will it have any effect on that?
as long as we spend it for that purpose, we'll be fine.
Okay, okay.
Because that was to the town and not to the Arts
Right.
Commission was not a 501 in itself anyway,
Right.
so.
Okay. Other questions or comments?
I concur, and it's a challenging board anyway, as it is, and I think taking the handcuffs off, so to speak, taking the restrictions off of, council and government oversight, it should free the Arts Commission to do exactly what they do, they create. And so I think it's going to be beneficial to them as well. I had some time on that board when it was first launched, and we grew into that. We had to grow into that. We had to learn each other and their personalities and so forth. And art-minded people are very creative people, and different mindset than government-minded people that, look for a budget and things like that. And so it was challenging to get going, but I'm glad that the years that we did have it, and may continue at some point, did launch an interest from the community in the arts. And that's what it was designed to do, so.
Well, I will tell you, working with Raquel and with Melissa in Jeff's office, who's been very active on this board, both of them are staying on the committee, and like Raquel said, our intent is just completely a smooth transition into the new committee. But again, like your terminology, we're going to take their handcuffs off to get more people involved that want to be involved in the arts and bring things to Smyrna that would encourage the arts. So I feel real good about the decision that was made, so.
Great. Other questions or comments? Rex, I think you're up for December, December sales tax and December state shared tax.
And then if it's all right, Mayor, I'd like to do a 6-month presentation on the general fund.
It's going to take 6 months, or you want to do a presentation about the 6 months?
I could cut it down to about 6 minutes.
So I'm good with that.
Okay. December local sales tax, we received $1,262,502. That gives us a year-to-date budget surplus of $1,136,139. State shared tax, we received $546,193. That gives us a year-to-date surplus of $79,630. There we go.
Thank you.
Like I said, this is a 6-month review of the general fund. We're going to start off with a statement of revenues. The column to the left is the category of revenue that it is, and it's highly summarized. The next column would be the budget that was adopted, and year-to-date realized is the next column. And percent realized, we're 6 months into the year, so 6 months into a year would be 50% would be our monthly comparative, which is highlighted in yellow at the bottom. So anything that's 50% or better is good. Of course, a lot of our revenues come in seasonally instead of exactly 1/12 each month. So we'll go down through here. Under taxes, local sales tax is the primary reason why taxes is over budget. Licenses, permits, and fees, our next category. Building permits is at 70% for the year. Electric permits, it's 61%. And liquor inspections at 63%. Now, you're not seeing that on the slides. This is something I'm throwing in as we go. Probation. Probation is over budget significantly. We didn't have a lot of history to deal with since we've set up our probation department. And it's also driven by the number of people that are in the system. So your revenues are up and your expenses will also be up as we see as we go on in the presentation. The court system was impacted by COVID. Some of the dates were shut down. You'll see that for general sessions, and as you go down the column there, traffic courts also been impacted by COVID. Other revenue, primarily hotel, motel, penalty, and interest have driven that up over 50%. Federal, state, and county, it's 63%. That's primarily from the unbudgeted state CARES Act grant that we received for over $761,000 that we've already received. So that's a good thing. Golf revenue, and they've done an outstanding job with golf. How these guys, people out there do a great job of keeping up the course, and that's a positive impact off of COVID. You can get out and recreate and socially distance at the same time. Parks and recreation, the event center and the outdoor center, they were shut down for a period of time during the year, and you can tell it's affected their revenue stream. So as we go down to the last line, the total general fund adjusted there, that's adjusted. As we were going through this, we noted that we had a budget amendment that we need to make to decrease probation in an amount of $145,900, and obviously we'll do that at the end of the year, but this is an adjusted number over what the budget was. But as you can see on the total general fund adjusted all the way to the right at 56%, and we would be glad to be at 50%, so we're in good shape on our revenues flowing in. Now we'll go to the expenses, and we've done really well on our expenses. Of course, this percentage used, which is the last column on the right, it's the comparative would be 50% or less would be good. So we're good all the way down to probation, and I just explained there's more people in the system, so we're going to have more variable costs for toxicology and for monitoring devices for the people on probation. The next one that's above 50% would be health, welfare, and culture, which is what I call our nonprofits. Typically, the checks are cut in July and January, but for the Smyrna Charity Assistance Fund, we cut that check in total in July, so it's got it skewed a little bit above 50, but by the end of the year, it'll be 100%. And then the last line, row is transfer to debt service. Obviously, we pay most of our debt service in April and May in the year, and that'll that'll take care of itself. So, total expenses for the general fund, we're at 43%, and obviously that's a good thing. And our guys spent a little time, and right now they're estimating the surplus to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 to $3.6 million. And obviously this is subject to change, but these are based on the numbers through December.
Questions for Rex?
I'd like to point out to the mayor and council, when we built this budget, if you remember back, we were pretty much done with the budget process when the COVID issue hit us, and we didn't know what, our revenue streams and how they were going to be impacted. And we, asked you to have some faith in us and let us manage this budget. And I just want to point out that every department head, every manager within the town has done a tremendous job. And these numbers reflect that. This didn't just happen. This was some pretty hard work on their part, and the finance department working with us to keep us in track. We always look at the budget. It's something that Rex and I talk about. On a normal year, we probably talk about it at least once a month. This year, we've been talking about it weekly. We've been keeping a close eye on where we're at, what the budget represents, because we wanted to earn your respect that we would do what we asked you to let us do. So I'm very pleased. I reviewed these numbers last week, and I called Rex about 5:30 and said, "Man, you have made my day to be able to give you this report." But I really want the accolades of this work to go to the right people, and that's the Tom Roses and the Kevin Rigsby's and the Todd Spearmans and the chiefs and the work that they've done in each of their departments to really communicate with us everything we needed. I feel good that we haven't missed anything that we needed to do, and we've been watching this budget very closely. I feel good about where we're at, and again, I want to show some appreciation for that. We will send this presentation out to you tomorrow so you can have a little more time to look at it. The mayor kind of hinted that she wanted me to do that today, but I really didn't want to. I wanted y'all to see this tonight and know the work that's been done by your employees.
Well, I think we all had all the faith in the world in this team. What we didn't know was what was the pandemic going to do to us. I think we all sat in that budget meeting just dumbfounded as to what could. Exactly. But I also want to thank the citizens too for shopping local, for going to the golf course, for standing behind us, and for those things they can do within our community that they've stood up and done too. So we appreciate all of your hard work as department heads, but also for those employees that are day in and day out, how much we appreciate them. And I hope they understand that when it came to salaries and things, we were cautiously optimistic, and we wanted to make sure that we took care of them, and I think that we've done that.
Absolutely.
So, other comments or questions from council?
Are we required to do anything with the surplus? Does it have to go into rainy day fund? Does it have to, can we be used next year as start out with that extra money? Or is there any requirement of what we do with it that we come in under budget?
No, according to our financial policies, there's nothing that we're required to do. What we've been doing the last few years is determining what our surplus is going to be and transferring a big portion of that over into capital projects to fund Enid Springs Road, Cedar Stone Park, and to be able to pay cash for them.
Other questions or comments? Okay, we will move on to reports. Rex, oh, you got something else?
I got a report.
Oh, you have a report?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Look at you, Rex.
The only,
I know.
the only thing that I've got is, since we're talking about budgets, our budget meetings start tomorrow morning with our department heads, and we'll continue all through next week. And we're looking forward to getting that started and seeing how the year's going to shake out.
Great. Brian, this will be your third budget going through?
Third budget.
Got your feet wet now.
Absolutely.
Rex, any prognostications going into next year? I mean, how do you see the economy at all, or the market at all? Is there any can you get a grasp as you meet with department heads? What's your take on what we're looking at in the upcoming year?
You know, I think that COVID is going to be the big driver of that. If we can get the school situation, get everybody back in school, obviously that's okay. That's going to help us for the economy to completely return to normal. But you know, unless there's another surprise related to COVID, I think this next year will probably be pretty similar to this year.
You can probably plan in that manner, I guess, then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You done?
I'm done.
Okay. Kevin Rigsby, anything?
Just, we do have planning commission next week, and we do have a big agenda, and so we have some couple items that would be coming to you all. One thing I do want to we talked the last couple months about the independent living facility that came through for zoning purposes. They have brought their site plan and construction plans in, so they are moving forward with that pretty quickly. So I just wanted to know that's something that many in the community are excited about, so I want to bring that up to you.
Great. Other questions for Kevin? Tom, anything?
I just wanted to know that the ITS Phase 1-2 project is under construction. Been talking with Stansell Electric, who's also doing the I-24 Smart Corridor project. They're the contractor on this project. And they started working in some of the cabinets, getting in there and taking a look at some of the equipment that we've got. They're going to be working with the Jones Brothers, starting down Sam Ridley to do some work along that section, so coordinating with them. We got some meetings set up to talk to some of the CCTV vendors to take and working with PD, getting them involved as far as seeing how those are going to function, and also working with the IT department on how the TVs and monitoring systems are going to be set up back in the public works area. But I just wanted to know that it is kicked off and we are under construction.
Great. Questions for Tom? Chief, anything?
Very quickly, just to give you an update, the LPRs are doing fantastic. I get an email every morning telling me what the activities have been. Sometimes there's 2 or 3, sometimes there's as many as 8. There's a lot more stolen cars out there than I thought.
And just so the public knows, can you say what those are?
What stolen cars are?
No, what the LPRs are.
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be smart.
What the LPRs are.
They're a license plate reader, and so what they do is they recognize license plates that have been entered into the National Crime Information Center database. And it's either stolen cars, wanted persons, missing persons. Those are the type of things that we tell it to ping us and let us know they're coming into town.
Have we apprehended many of the ones?
We've apprehended quite a few. But at the same time, and I want to stress this, our pursuit policy has not changed because some of these stolen cars will not stop. But again, we're going to try to be as careful as we can. And I mean, I know you all saw the tragic thing that happened in Cookville the other day. Pursuits are very scary, and it's an easy way for people to get hurt. But yes, we've apprehended quite a few. And give you an update on the body cameras. After a lot of begging and pleading with the company, we're looking at the possible deployment of mid to late March. So we're excited about that.
Great. Questions for Chief?
Any questions?
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Todd, anything?
Charles?
Chief? Charles?
Mayor and Council, just give you out on Eden Springs Road, Tom and I, we've met with Middle Tennessee Electric about getting street lights put up on that new section through there, so they have that in their design, and we'll be installing those here hopefully in the next few weeks. Construction has started back on Sam Ridley. We've had night closures since Sunday night, putting in storm drains all the way across Sam Ridley. Those ended last night. That was our last full closure. We will get the plates up and those road cuts paved starting on Monday. So we'll just hang with us next few days and we'll get those fixed. Jefferson Pike, that has been awarded by TDOT to civil constructors out of Franklin. The pre-con will be held on February the 2nd. So construction should be looking at March on that one. And on the new Lee Victory construction plans for the Nolan Road connector for the park, construction plans are just about complete, and Mike and I will be getting with the design team and their construction engineer and inspecting team to go over those plans before we get ready to put it out to bid.
Great. Questions for Charles?
Charles, where will they start the Jefferson Pike work? Will it be on the 840 end, or will it be on the Smyrna end?
That'll come up in the pre-construction meeting. The first part of it, I'm sure, will be Mike's, utilities. That'll be a year and a half.
About when barrels hit.
Right, yeah, so before they actually get into the road. And the bridge work is the part that they got to get started first is the bridge replacement there at the lake.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Just after Chief was up here.
Let's see it.
Yeah, it gets more. I've started noticing more street lights out. Is that something that the night shift police department kind of makes a list of if they're doing in neighborhoods or whatever that?
You're talking about the, not
Street lamps.
street
The
lamps?
street lights.
Street lamps, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I will get with the chief and see if we can make sure that we're
I was
looking
just
for
thinking of
those.
some, the ones that are out all the
Yeah.
time over and over, that it's one of those
Yeah.
things that I think
Yeah,
helps
if you
with
notice
safety
one,
too.
let us know and we'll.
Poor Tom, I call or text Tom or email
I bet you
Tom.
do it right then, too, don't you? You probably do it right then.
Of course I do it right then. If I don't do it right then, I
Tom's in
forget it.
pajamas probably, and hey, there's a street light.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Let's move on.
Hey, Brian,
Brian gets those calls too.
if I've got one, I want the bolt taken out of it. It shines right in my bedroom.
Transfer that one.
Yeah. I'm not sure who's out. Nobody?
nobody.
Nobody
Yeah,
has
that's it.
reports for out there. Okay, Miss Diane?
Well, we've had 34 new business license issued. Seems like people still want to do business in Smyrna.
Great. It's a good thing. Brian?
A couple of things, very quick, Mayor and Council. We are participating in the National Wear Red Day here at the town. That will be on, let's see here, there's a date on here. Friday, February the 5th of 2021, and this is to recognize Wear Red to raise awareness for cardiovascular disease in women. So on that day, we'd ask everybody to go red and recognize this disease and the issues around it. Also, I'm happy to announce that this year we'll be working with the United Way to provide a VITA site. VITA is Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. And we'll be using our downstairs, the old police department entrance to Town Hall. They'll be doing this, anybody that has a simple income tax requirement and less than $66,000 or less, we can help them through the United Way get their taxes done at no charge. And they will do electronic filing for them, so they can increase the quickness of getting their money back into their checkbooks and stuff. So this is a program that will be done all over our county, but this year in Smyrna, you'll be able to do it here at Town Hall, starting on February 10th through April 14th. And the number to call or the email address there is 615-830-7940, or visit us at www.yourlocaluw.org VITA to schedule your appointment. We're excited about providing that service to our community. The other thing I've got today, I received a really nice certificate and recognize Kevin Rigsby and the work he did, but the United States Census Bureau sent us a 2020 thank you for the work by the town of Smyrna to get the census information done. The initial response was we had one of the best years ever for collection of data. Now, we have not seen any of the data yet. Hopefully, we'll be getting that soon, but collection-wise was up tremendously. So, hoping we're getting a good census. The last thing I have to share is some news that's never easy to share with the council and with our community, but unfortunately, we've experienced quite a few deaths associated with the town of Smyrna over the last week or so. Two previous employees, Rufus Pee Wee McPeat passed away, who was one of our dispatchers at the police department for many years, and several interesting stories told about Mr. McPeat and the work he did here, and I think he was loved by most of our employees. He's quite a character. Also, Matt Johnson, who worked at our wastewater treatment plant, he passed away this week. He was suffering from cancer. And then close to home, death of Keith Jerry Shenodens. So I make sure I say both those names because Shadowins. I'll say it right, but he went by Keith in some markets and he went by Jerry in others. So, but he worked at our out at the golf course. And then also I wanted to share with you, we got word this morning that one of our employees at the water sewer maintenance that we all know and love, been here I think close to 40 years with us, David Pruitt, his wife Evelyn passed away last night, and I've sent an email out to everybody as far as the arrangements for her funeral and stuff. But please keep all these families in your prayers. They're all great employees and have been great employees over the years with the town, and it's just been a tough week with deaths in our community. So, thank you.
Jeff?
I have nothing.
Raquel?
I just want to extend my condolences to all of the town staff who have experienced losses over the last couple of weeks. I will keep you in my thoughts and prayers. And also to say thank you to everyone who's worked on the budget and for putting us in the positive position that we're in. Thank you all. That's it.
G?
Gosh, it seems like we spend too much time sending out condolences and such as that. It's tough times, but sincere condolences to everyone that Brian mentioned, and then a couple more that I feel like I need to talk about. One being Sissy Adcock. If anybody ever went to see Dr. Pinto, then you saw Sissy. She probably stuck a needle in your butt, you know? Just to put it bluntly, I mean, you know, Sissy was the one who gave the shots. That's the way it worked. She was a fine lady, and, you know, our store was adjacent to Dr. Pinto's, and we spent a lot of time together, and she was a fine lady. Her daughter, Julie, and Greg, hearts and prayers are with them. And also, Miss Dorothy Holland passed. Miss Holland was my 5th grade teacher at the Rock School. And Miss Holland was too easy on me. I really liked her, and she was just a wonderful lady. And she had, her husband, I think, was, I never knew him. He passed before we came to town, but I think he was the football coach and maybe a principal at one of the schools around. But her sons, of course, is Dean, the oldest, Donnie and David, they're like the Gill boys, they're a legend. And if anybody's been around Smyrna for a long time, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But they all made good for themselves, and educators just like their parents. And Miss Dorothy was, 96 years old, I think, but she was a very fine lady. And that's all I got. Be kind and shop local.
I thought there was something else he was going to talk about. Did you?
I was waiting.
Nothing
What
else?
did you say?
I thought there was something else you were going to talk about tonight.
I'll
Was there
leave
not?
it for you, whatever it is, I don't remember.
Oh, you don't remember? Okay. Tim?
I'll add my condolences to our town family as far as employees and employee families, that members that have passed away, and certainly condolences to our community. Thanks.
Thanks. Jerry?
Yeah, same here. Certainly a lot of people that have passed away, and want to send my condolences as well. HG, he was a principal at Jefferson.
Mr. Holland was?
He was at Jefferson, and I was there when he passed away. And Miss Holland was my 5th and 6th grade teacher. Back then, some of the teachers actually did 2 different grades, and she was actually my first teacher that was not a relative. I had a relative for 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and they were kind of hard on me.
So many things. So
anyway, it was finally nice to get out from underneath an ant. Also,
Did you do 2 different years?
Yeah, it was his fifth and sixth grade
I
year,
wanted to
but he
make
was
sure
still in
that
fifth
that
grade.
was, that was clear. If I'd have said she was my teacher for 2 years, you guys would have. But certainly, she was such a sweet lady. I got something from her about 8 years ago where she had found a picture of us when we were in the 4th grade, and she was in it. And so she was always so sweet. But also, I just want to say congratulations to. We had a couple of different schools in our town that were in the state tournament for the bowling, and Stewart's Creek and Smyrna High School. And I think Stewart's Creek girls ended up in the semifinals, I believe is what it was. And Smyrna High School's bowling team ended up bringing home the silver medal, I guess it was. So congratulations to both of those schools, and we're certainly proud of you. So that's all I've got, Mayor.
Steve?
I'll also add my condolences to all of the folks. There's a lot of people there that I've grown up respecting. And HG, I'm not going to compare the Hollands to the Gills or the Gills to the Hollands, because I think you probably insulted all 4 of them. But I do understand your point that they are, growing up in this town, that there are some families that are legendary. And so I understand. And also to your shop local comment, you guys know how I like the numbers, so I ran some of Rex's numbers. Our local sales tax is averaging $56,000 more a month right now from last year. So keep up the good work, you guys that are going out and shopping. That helps us keep taxes low. So keep doing that. And just so you have the other number, the state sales tax, state shared tax is averaging $28,000 more per month. So that's all good news, and especially in a COVID economy. So that's all.
Great. Mark?
Well, speaking of that, that was something I was going to mention. Just it was spoken, Kevin kind of headed up the whole census thing, and thank you, Kevin, for doing that. That's a big job, and that in itself, as those numbers come back in, really help our town. I mean, the more population, so to speak, that we have, our taxes are much cheaper on the public. So if you weren't counted, think about being counted next time, because it helps everybody. To Donnie and Sue, the Holland family, and just our condolences and best wishes to them and their family, the loss of Dorothy and Donnie's mom. You mentioned David Pruitt and his wife, and Evelyn Pruitt, and David's been around, like you said, about 40 years here in the town. And he's just been kind of one of those icons and mainstays here at the town of Smyrna. So we want to wish his family all our condolences, the McPeaks, the Johnsons, the Shadowans, all the people that were mentioned tonight. And the last one hasn't passed away recently, but about a year ago, Diane's mom. We lost Diane's mom. And so, Diane, we were thinking of you today, and I knew if I saw you tonight, I wanted to make sure I mentioned that to you, and bless you. I know we miss our mamas, especially that first year's a tough one. And so some of us have been there, and we understand that, and or a father, or a loved one for that matter. But our moms are just, man, they're something. And so I just want to let you know that I was thinking of you today about that. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Some good news. Our Smyrna Outdoor Adventure Center, known as the SOAC, is going to reopen Tuesday, February 2nd. There will be modifications in place for safety of our guests and staff. The hours of operation are Tuesday through Saturday, 10 to 5, and we're excited to share the hands-on Harley-Davidson exhibit with our guests. This exhibit was made possible by a grant from the Harley-Davidson Foundation and invites children to explore a pretend motorcycle dealership, as well as associated activities that promote science, technology, engineering, and math education. SOAC will host this exciting exhibit through May the 3rd, and for more information, you can visit us at www.townofsmyrna.org or call at 615-459-9710. So we're glad to get SOAC back up and open.
Adults left coming right there?
Absolutely. You pay the fee, we'll let you in.
I'll pull in.
There you go. I also want to pass on condolences to those employees and their families. Sissy was close to our family as well. Miss Holland, Steve and Raquel, that's Lee's grandmother, if you didn't realize that. So go back quite a ways with Miss Holland and their family. Donnie actually taught school with Mama at Smyrna Elementary, so condolences to them. David, I know David was so close. David Pruitt was so close to his wife, and I know they've been going through a tough time here lately, so thinking about them. I sent you all an email about the regional transportation plan that the MPO has been working on. The final vote for that will hopefully be at our February meeting. I kind of wanted you to see some of the hard work that's been done by the staff of GNRC as well as TDOT and Federal Highway. So looking forward to that February meeting. Tuesday, we had a call with the mayors across Tennessee, had a call with the governor about vaccines. I want to let you know the percentage of vaccines that are going into arms here in Rutherford County is phenomenal on the amount of vaccines that we receive. We all want more vaccines to be able to administer those, but I want you all to know what a wonderful job our health department and those staff are doing. It is a little bit frustrating because rules and regulations are put down from the state. All of the appointments are done through the state, and so when frustrations happen, a lot of times the ones who get the brunt of that are our local health department employees when they're not necessarily the cause. So any kudos that you can send out to those health department workers. I know there are individuals that are providing coffee for them in the mornings at State Farm. Some are doing lunches for them. So I know any amount of praise that they can hear is greatly appreciated because it's been tough times for them. Last but not least, today is a special day in our households. My brother-in-law Tim turns 50 today. Raquel and Steve, we were all in school with Tim, and so a big day for him. So it's kind of been birthday week at the Reed/Victory/Slate house.
It is that year for most of us, I think.
Oh, no, it's not.
But yours might be 70, ours is just 50.
Is
happy
Mary
birthday.
got one coming up?
I'm a ways.
She
I'm a
does, but
ways.
she's youngest, I think, so
Yes.
she's got me by a couple weeks.
I will tell you, I almost brought it tonight. I found some birthday pictures, some sleepover pictures years ago from when you were at the house and.
Oh, joy.
Yes, so I'll try to bring those next time, so.
we
I'd
are
like for you to
looking,
get those to Brian.
we are
Right.
looking for a Christmas card for next year from the city
There you
council
go.
that we'll be happy
Thank you for
to.
forgetting.
I'll come by your house and pick that
Yes,
up.
yeah. Anything else? If nothing else, then we are adjourned.